I've got the latest on a potential Brandon Ingram trade, but could a move be held up by the Pelicans TV deal and Ballys Sports? I'll explain in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here with you on this Tuesday. Here's what we're going to do this week. We're going to go Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and there's a reason for that, hopefully. And we're going to do Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday this week. And then Thursday night, let's do a live show that's kind of like a bonus sort of show where I can interact with y'all. I'll get this scheduled after I record this one, and it'll be up there so you can kind of set a notification and all of that. So I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, here with y'all on Tuesday. And we are going to talk about the latest Brandon Ingram trade updates, why the luxury tax and the Pelicans TV deal might be complicating things just a little bit. And then we got some Olympic updates for you in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, at least during the regular season, breaking down everything you want to know about this Pelicans team, the number one Pelicans podcast. So subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. So let's get into it. And part of the reason I wanted to go Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is August 6th. You know, if you're watching on YouTube, you might be watching on the 5th. This comes out early on YouTube, but the 6th is an important day because 6 months from the 6th is the NBA's trade deadline. 6 months. That's kind of key here because if you sign an extension, Brandon Ingram or another player that we're going to talk about here, it means you can't be traded for 6 months. Last week when we talked about Jared Allen, and I said, depending on when his deal is official, it means he might be able to be traded or not. He signed it on the 2nd, his extension, which means there's 4 days for him to be traded. But say Brandon Ingram signs an extension, the end of today, end of Tuesday the 6th, or the 7th, 8th, 9th, whenever, he can't be traded for 6 months, and that means he's for sure on the Pelicans next season. That also goes for other players, and one is Lauri Markkanen from the Utah Jazz. We don't think Markkanen himself is going to be traded here for New Orleans, but there's implications of what might happen should he sign an extension. And his extension is a little bit different than what Brandon Ingram's would be. It's technically like a raise is what they would be giving him this season, but the technicalities of it don't matter because by all accounts, Markkanen wants to be in Utah. And Jake Fisher reports that the Utah Jazz want to build around Lauri Markkanen. So they're probably not trading him. We've heard that he's been linked to the Golden State Warriors most heavily. The Lakers were interested. Basically, everyone was interested. The Pelicans were interested at one point in time, but they're not trading him, let's say. So Jake Fisher reports of Yahoo Sports that Jazz want to build around Lauri Markkanen. So if they're trying to build around him, they're not going to do like a slow and steady rebuild, right? You have Danny Ainge there who wants to win. Like that's kind of who he is. But Markkanen's also 27. This is not an 18, 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old player where you're like, oh, he's not even in his prime yet. He's in his prime right now. So I cannot imagine that Utah, should they sign him, and they will, to a big extension that means he can't be traded this season, that they're just going to be like, okay, cool, let's be bad again. They've missed the playoffs the past 2 years, right? They want to kind of go all in with him, and they have tons of picks. So if they want to kind of accelerate a rebuild, could they all of a sudden become a suitor for Brandon Ingram? The Pelicans need some big man depth, and they've got two that maybe could be on the chopping block in John Collins and Walker Kessler. We've talked about Kessler a lot as maybe a cheap option just to trade for by himself without a Brandon Ingram trade to make him the starting center. Could you give up a first-round pick, Jordan Hawkins, something like that to get a deal done? I think you could have, but maybe they just want to trade for Brandon Ingram and you build a trade around John Collins and Walker Kessler. Kessler being your starter, and then John Collins kind of playing that small ball 5 Larry Nance role because he also can shoot threes a little bit. Now, Collins, in my opinion, is absolutely a power forward and not really a center at all, and I don't love him as a player as much as I once did. So I wouldn't love this move unless there's a pick or two also involved in that coming to New Orleans. But you could get a deal done that way, I think. The other implication of Markkanen signing a deal at the end of Tuesday, right after like the 3 p.m., 2 p.m. Central, whatever the trade deadline time is that, say he signs it on the 7th and it just rules him out for the year, right, is the Warriors' number one trade target in Markkanen is not there anymore. Do they maybe get desperate and go for Brandon Ingram and start making better offers? And we've talked about what their offers could be on the table. Jonathan Kuminga, or, we all would want Brandon Podziemski, but it doesn't sound like he's on the table there. But could you do, someone like Kevon Looney and Kuminga and a pick or two for Brandon Ingram? And maybe you could. So it opens up like more possibilities once Markkanen signs this extension. They're going to use some of the available cap space they have on this extension to give him a raise this season. That's maybe holding up other moves that they've been making. And in fact, it is. They haven't signed their draft picks and stuff, or some of the free agents they've reportedly agreed to extensions with, because they want to preserve that cap space first to extend Lauri Markkanen and then sign those other players to exceptions. That's smart. That's a good way to do all of this. And all of a sudden, once he signs this extension, it's official. They can make the flurry of moves that they want to make, because you could argue, well, if you knew you're going to sign him, and everyone knows they're going to sign him at this point, right? It's like a foregone conclusion. Why wait? Why not just get it done now? And I think that's, a very realistic thing that we could have seen, but it's because of the way the salary cap works and the way they're structuring this sort of deal. But it opens up the Jazz as a trade option. It opens up the Golden State Warriors as a trade option. But here's the thing. With any deal right now, the Pelicans might need to shed salary, bring back less money than they're sending out in a trade. I want them to pay the luxury tax this year. But right now, they're $1.4 million in the luxury tax. They may not be able to pay that. And it has to do with the TV deal. So maybe there's an ideal trade out there for Brandon Ingram, but because it brings more money back or doesn't get the Pelicans under the luxury tax, that's a concern right now. And I'll explain why. Ballys Sports, right? Getting rid of him would be a good thing. Not so fast. This is something we've talked about, but I think it's worth reiterating again. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by GameTime. It's the summer, and that means baseball. If you're traveling, if you're not in New Orleans, if you live in another city and you want to get outside, get to the park, have some snacks, have some drinks, it's just a great time to do it. I was actually at Dodger Stadium recently. GameTime is the way to go. That's my go-to ticketing marketplace right now. And GameTime is also an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball. And that means you're getting tickets faster and easier. And one of the things on the GameTime app, prices actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. But it's not just Major League Baseball or basketball during the NBA season, right? It's anything you want. Sports, certainly, but comedy, theater, concerts, and more. And GameTime is my go-to ticketing app for a number of reasons. You get your panoramic view from your seat on the app before you buy it. You also have the lowest price guarantee, or GameTime will credit you 110% of the difference. They also have flash deals, last-minute deals. You're not sure what to do on a Friday night? Get on the GameTime app, see what's going on in your city, and all of a sudden, you got an awesome date night. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. And for your second listen, enjoy the Locked On NBA podcast. I actually host this every single Wednesday. There's no offseason in the NBA, and Locked On NBA provides daily basketball analysis from national and local experts in 30 minutes or less. No one keeps you as informed and entertained as the Locked On NBA podcast, available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, let's get into Diamond Sports, Bally Sports. I'm going to use three words to describe them as like kind of interchangeable, but it just is like an important disclaimer here. Diamond Sports technically owns Bally Sports, and Sinclair, I think, owns all of them. They're all one and the same thing. We're going to use Diamond and Bally Sports kind of interchangeably. It means the same thing here. So Sports Business Journal reports that, potentially 5 NBA teams could be cut and lose their TV deals here. Those 5 teams are the Dallas Mavericks, Detroit Pistons, Memphis Grizzlies, and the Oklahoma City Thunder, along with the New Orleans Pelicans here. Some of those teams are actually surprising in there, but overall, I kind of get it, right? Diamond and Bally's, they're going through a bankruptcy. They're trying to restructure and just stay solvent and figure out how can we keep bringing some money in, make some money, and put these games on TV. So they may cut some teams. They've done this with certain MLB teams, right? Say that happens and it means no more Bally Sports. The Pelicans get cut from them. They're released from the contract. They don't need to have games on Bally Sports Plus, or if you have one of the cable providers that has, Bally Sports in the package, right? That's a good thing for you, all of the Pelicans fans, because look, it's been a pain and the product hasn't been particularly good and accessibility has just been lacking, right? So this is a good thing. Yes and no, not so fast here. And this is something that I've talked a lot about before. Bally Sports pays the Pelicans millions of dollars. In this article from Sports Business Journal, it's estimated that, NBA teams have annual local rights fees, basically the Bally Sports things, of about $40 million. Say on average, the Pelicans would be lower. It's maybe in the $30 million range. If all of a sudden you're cut from that and they get rid of the Pelicans, that's $30 million the team's not making. And look, I don't want you to think I'm defending them being cheap or anything like that. I'm not. They need to pay, right? They need to. I've been saying they should pay the luxury tax, all of that. But suddenly not having $30 to $40 million throws your books way out of whack and potentially in the red. And it's not like you can just make that up instantly. In some senses, you can, right? More on that here in a second. But that puts the Pelicans in a bad position. When I've been saying they need to pay the luxury tax, maybe that's not as easy to do if you're down $30 million before the year even starts and you're scrambling just to try and make some of that back. That's not a good thing. Again, they have ways they could do this, certainly. I would like them to do it, but the reality of the situation is they probably won't. So it's not like you can just make that money up instantly by putting the game on local broadcasts, right? On Fox 8 in New Orleans, we've seen that. For a team that really needs to pay the luxury tax, I find this to be a pretty precarious situation for them. Cutting the Pelicans for sure. It sounds like the Pels would be one of the teams cut no matter what. So when you say that, when them cutting the Pelicans seemingly for sure, among the 15 teams that they have rights for, probably shows that the Pelicans are one of the least valuable ones. So to make up that money deficit would take even more work, right? You'd have to really try and cobble 40 million, 30 million together. But when you're one of maybe the least valuable TV broadcast rights, and that's more just based on market size, New Orleans is either the smallest or the second smallest market size, to be perfectly honest with y'all, Memphis being the other one. That's not just an easy thing to do. So I know what you're going to say. What about Fox? The Pelicans were on it last year, right? Gail Benson owns Fox 8. So a couple things here. The Bensons haven't owned Fox 8 in a number of years. That is not a thing anymore. It hasn't been a thing since, I think, pre-pandemic. Gray Television owns the Fox 8 channel down here. So it's not just as simple as putting them on Fox 8, unfortunately. And I was the first person to say this, right? Because they have contracts with Fox to put on Fox Broadcasting, whatever, Dancing with the Stars or The Masked Singer. I actually don't know what it is. Fox isn't just going to allow you to preempt their programming with Pelicans games that probably aren't as valuable and might not even pull as many big ratings as some of those Fox TV shows do. That creates a problem here, right? That's why I've said I don't think the thing is they can just switch to Fox. There's contracts in place that basically prevent that. That's why when they put 10 games on gray television last year, a bunch of them were on Bounce TV, not the main Fox station, because of that sort of thing. So what do, right? Do you bring it in-house and just kind of do it yourself? There's a Clipper Vision streaming service, which is what the Clippers have done, right? Before re-upping with Bally's a couple of years ago, I was the first person to tell you and report that the Pelicans had seriously considered bringing it all in-house, just kind of saying, screw Bally Sports, we're going to do it ourselves. We'll sell the ads. We'll do all of that. And we'll try and do this. But it costs a lot of money up front to do all of that and to build out the infrastructure. And that was a big reason why the Pelicans didn't do it. Maybe it's being cheap. Maybe it's not. Now, I think they should spend. Even if the Pelicans don't have the liquid cash to do it, right? There's one thing to have the franchise be valuable, but that doesn't necessarily represent liquid money, right? You own your home, you have equity in your home, but it's not money that you can necessarily go and spend. You can leverage that to spendable money, to liquidity, but not always. So say the Pelicans don't even have, or Gail Benson doesn't have the liquidity to do it. You can get some of that. You can sell things. You can sell things, whatever it might be. You could sell minority ownership and stake in the team to raise some money. You could do a number of different things here. But will they? Likely not. So again, we're looking at the reality of the situation, even if that's what I think they should do. We can talk about how they should do it all we want, but if they don't, it doesn't truly matter here. Ultimately, though, I do think the best solution for New Orleans would be to bring it in-house, just create their own product, make it like $10 a month, sell a ton of, as many subscriptions as you can with that. But when you look at some of the estimates for how many people were paying for Bally Sports Plus per month, if it's like 100,000, $20 a month, that's great, but that's still not necessarily getting you there. And I don't even think it was necessarily 100,000 were paying for Bally Sports Plus per month. I believe the Pelicans gifted a lot of season ticket holders like free subscriptions to it. So those are kind of comped and lost money. It remains to be seen how they can maybe make up that financial shortfall if they are kind of put in that position. So while it does sound great that, yes, free from the shackles of an awful product in Bally Sports, is it good for the team? Not necessarily. I did a whole show on this, I think like a year or two ago, right? For the everydayers, I can't remember exactly when it was, but this money impacts the team. It's the unfortunate reality of being a fan, talking about this and being like, they might go cheap, but you got to just kind of accept it sucks, right? No part of this is particularly fun or anything like that. But I don't think it's as easy as just put it on Fox. One, you've got to sell new commercials, new ads. I don't think those just get imported from Bally Sports. You need to hire producers. You've got to pay them salaries, benefits. That stuff costs money. You need a control room to run all of that stuff, right? You need experienced people. Do you do a pregame show, a postgame show? Now, the good news is no matter what happens with Bally Sports is the broadcast team, and I don't know about some of the other people, but say the on-air talent is paid, they're employees of the team, the Pelicans. So Joel Myers, Antonio Daniels, Jen Hale, Aaron Summers, Gus Kattengell, kind of all, John DeShazer and Todd Graffinini, basically all that is they're employees of the team. That's at least a good thing, meaning that you don't need to worry about them going away or whatever might happen. Or if, the Bally Sports cuts New Orleans, you don't get Joel and Antonio on the broadcast anymore. They will for sure still be here as long as the Pelicans want them and keep paying them. And that's kind of a separate thing. That's the good thing out of all of this, that, the faces that you love, the voices you like to hear are still going to be here with this team. But we're going to see, it's also especially precarious given that we're not this isn't like they have a year to figure it out or 6 months to figure it out. The season's going to start in late October. We're basically 2.5 months away from the start of the regular season, about 2.5 months from the start of the regular season. Preseason games will start happening, in early October, essentially. That is coming here before we know it. And they need to have this figured out just for the books, things like that. That stuff matters. It's the unfortunate reality of it. So, yeah, there might not be Bally Sports Plus next year that you need to deal with, or Bally Sports at all, but it could put the team in other negative situation. When we're talking about the luxury tax, right? 1.4 million in equals about 2.2, I think, more or less, that they would need to pay as a luxury tax payment. It doesn't sound like a lot, but what if they can't afford that anymore? Okay, we don't know the full financials of the team or anything like that, but that's worth keeping in mind. I don't want them to have to accept a worse trade for Brandon Ingram so that they can keep their books balanced by shedding some salary. I'd rather honestly have Bally's. My personal opinion, you can disagree with this. Let me know if you do in the comments down below. I'd rather deal with Ballys Sports plus another year if it just means that the Pelicans are going to pay the luxury tax this year and try and assemble the best team possible to win the most games. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments down below. So coming up next, Olympic updates for the Pelicans. Jose Alvarado, Daniel Theis. Where do they rank in some of the categories from the Olympics? That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. And today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by my favorite eBay Motors. Whatever you're looking to do on your car, eBay Motors can make it work. I got an old classic Corvette that's almost 50 years old. Should be hard to find parts for. Find them no problem on eBay Motors. New glass for the windows, had to replace that. Easy. New brakes and everything so that I'm safe to drive. No problem. That car drives better than a lot of new cars right now with the parts from eBay Motors. So whether you're looking for, speed, power, style, eBay Motors has you covered. LED headlights, roof racks for added utility, all of that sort of thing. eBay Motors is going to have it covered, whether your car's new or old, because with over 122 million parts for your vehicle, you're always going to find exactly what you're looking for. My favorite part is the eBay Guaranteed Fit. Your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. I've ordered from other places. Sometimes the parts don't fit. And, a 2-hour project is now a 4-day project and your car doesn't drive. And that's a terrible thing. And I also love the prices because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. So with all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home a big win. So keep your vehicle alive over at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, back in the studio, actually, here at the Locked On Pelicans studio. It's nice to be. We're going to do a live show Thursday night, probably like 6 or 7 p.m. Central. I'll get it scheduled. We're going to interact with y'all, the chat and everything, and I'll be able to answer your questions. We're going to kind of just do a bonus show here. We're down to 3 days a week right now, but let's do a 4th bonus show just because we've dropped it a little bit. And I want to answer your questions, and maybe, just maybe, we get some big news this week here. And for your second listen today, Locked On Saints. Ross Jackson is there at training camp giving you daily updates from what he is seeing, boots on the ground. Subscribe to the Locked On Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the Olympics are still going on. Pelicans still have a player out there right now, Daniel Theis. But let's start with Jose Alvarado. Puerto Rico lost to the USA on Saturday, 104-83. Jose, if you didn't watch the game, was 7 of 13 from the field, 3 of 7 for deep, 18 points. He had 3 assists and a steal. But their run is done. They're out. They are not in the group stages here. As it went for Puerto Rico, Jose was the leading scorer for the team here. From 3, he went 6 of 19, so not an amazing number there. The assist to turnover ratio was not beautiful either to see. He finished the tournament here with 9 assists and 7 turnovers. So not ideal. That's an assist turnover ratio of 3 to 2.3, and that's not great. But look, you want him not necessarily as a starter, and they were going up against, really quality competition here in a tough group. We weren't really expecting them necessarily to, make it out of their group. And that, I think, is kind of understandable with everything here for all that. So it's okay. I think that ended up being the case when it came to everything. It was going to be rough being in a group with the United States and Serbia here, along with South Sudan, who plays way tougher than you were expecting them to play, like, entirely, right? So it was going to be hard. But putting him against backups, I think he's going to do well. He looked very confident out there on the court. I liked the way that he was playing, being the number 1 guy, which he won't need to be in whatever role that he plays. I think it'll help him shoot a little bit better. That'll cut down on some of the turnovers when he can just get to the ball to higher quality players than he was playing with. I think he'll be just fine, but I like the form from him. I like the assuredness that he showed out there. Again, it wasn't like it didn't look like he didn't belong or anything. And we know that he does, but when you're playing with, not amazing players, that can damage you. And I didn't think it really hurt him horribly. So I was pretty pleased with what we saw from Jose Alvarado. Daniel Theis on Germany, who played today against Greece in the quarterfinals, by the way. Last game, Germany beat France 85-71. Theis grabbed 8 boards, which is no easy feat against a very tall France team that has Rudy Gobert and Victor Wembanyama on it. You know, for a good Germany team, Theis was the leading rebounder for them in group play with 7 boards per game. He averaged 10.3 points. The rebounds were 11th most in the group stages for any team in the Olympics. You know, we just talked about in the first segment them maybe trading for a starting, quality starting center in Walker Kessler and, maybe a backup in John Collins or however you want to do it. Theis, I think, can be serviceable enough. And he's proven it that he still can play, right? He was kind of on his way out of the NBA till the Pelicans came calling, but I think he can end up being, just fine. As long as you're running a lot of small ball lineups, which I don't think New Orleans is fully ready to do yet. So trying to still upgrade the center position, depending on what you think about Karlo Makovic could be an important thing still. But Theis showed that he's not basically that you could do worse, which, that's always at least kind of a good thing, right? But he played pretty well. We'll see how Germany does. It's still a tough test against Greece. They should win that game, though. They're a more talented team. We'll see if he keeps advancing. And maybe, Team USA is likely going to win the gold medal. Let's be perfectly honest here. But maybe you can get another medal here on the team with Daniel Theis, depending on where Germany finishes in Olympic play here. But I've been pretty happy with he's seen. He doesn't play heavy minutes or anything. So what he's doing in somewhat limited minutes, I think is pretty good overall. And you've got to like. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. More to come tomorrow on Wednesday and Thursday. And then Thursday nights, we'll kind of have 4 shows this week with the live show Thursday night. We're going to keep it rolling for you here in the offseason. Looking forward to doing a live show again, taking your questions. Maybe we'll have big news to talk about. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. This has been the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.